to keep a quorum just to perhaps make sure that we hit any voting items before we lose our quorum as well.
Right. So
So,
things we got to vote on are I-1 and all of H.
Mr. Chair, we're live streaming now. Did you want to start the meeting?
Before I start the meeting, I just want to make sure what we understand. The items we need approval on with a quorum are items H and I. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at our legal counsel. That sound right? You muted, Julia.
So, Mr. Chairman, so we need to take action on all items under E, all items under H, and the one item under I. G does not require any action.
Correct. Who are we waiting on, Chairman?
I'm the vice chair, but the mayor has to leave early, so I just want to making sure we got it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. This is Vice Chairman Peter Shade, Vice Chairman Peter Shade of the Public Works and Utilities Committee. The day is June 17th, 2022. It's 1:34 p.m. We were getting conflicting information about whether or not the chair was going to be available, and we have an issue with the number of folks attending. We do have a quorum present with the mayor, myself, and Councilmember Bowden. So, Councilmember Bowden, if you're still with us, I'm going to ask you to lead us in an invocation, please, sir.
All right. Sorry, some just popped up. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together today. Please grant us wisdom as we go about the city's business. Help us make the correct choices for the people of our city, and help us all to, once we get done with this meeting, have a wonderful long weekend. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
Amen.
I'll entertain a motion to approve our May 23rd, 2022 minutes.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Any amendments, changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Going down to item number E, Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Shade. In item E1, Grace Plantation, there's a 76 lot plantation located off of Main Road, just past St. John's Island High School. We have dedicated the roads to acceptance. They're all constructed and been improved. So we recommend approval and acceptance of those roads.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve item E1.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussions or questions for Mr. O'Brien as to E1? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item E2, Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, sir. This is a sidewalk that's being constructed on the west side of Morrison Drive in conjunction with the Morris Yard apartment project. The developer's paying for that. And this will be in the SCDOT right away. And as happens sometimes when we build these projects, they've asked us to maintain it. But it's a good deal for the city because the developers, absorbing all the costs for the construction of that. And we would recommend that.
And Mr. Vice Chair, the chairman has joined the meeting.
Okay. Let me finish this item number 2, then I can turn it back over to Mr. Waring. I'll entertain a motion to adopt item E2.
So moved. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion as to E2? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, we were a little bit under the gun, literally.
That's all right. That's all right. I know it was in able hands.
Yeah, the mayor has to boogie
You're
out
going to
early.
still have a quorum though, so you're going to be good. Also,
Yeah, we'll still be good with you joining us, Mr. Chairman. So we are up to item E2 has just been approved, and we're now up to E3, and I'll gladly pass the baton back to you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Shayade. E3, is this one you're going to cover, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, sir, Councilmember Waring. This is a drainage project that Mr. Fountain's Stormwater Organization is doing along Savannah Highway to improve some drainage issues there. And again, being in the SCDO right away, they've asked us to maintain after that, and we would recommend for approval of that.
Entertain a motion. Probably moved in. We got a second. Probably moving second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all of,
This is a small project that we've been waiting some years to accomplish. And
Right.
apparently, as normal, this is a acceptance that, we're kind of in a position where if we don't accept it, we can't move forward.
right.
All right.
Yeah, you have us an advice on that one, Mr. Mayor. I understand your pain. We do. Hypothetically, Mr. Fountain, if this thing were fixed, where would the state get the money to maintain it? I mean, does it come from income taxes? Does it come from road taxes? Or
Most of the state funding is out of the gas tax. It's a mix a little bit. I think they do receive some state general fund budget money as well, but a lot of their capital project work is gas tax money.
okay. Let me carry the motion because I know time's of the essence. All in favor of the motion? Any more discussion? Let me ask that. I see a hand up for Rick Giroux. Anyway, if you can hear me, Rick, you're on mute.
Not me.
Oh, really, on my screen, I see 5 fingers up. Anyway,
That's
Yeah.
Dave Bernstein, but I think he's later in the meeting.
okay. This is Giroux. Anyway, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Item E4, Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, this is acceptance of a portion of the right of way. And Matt, can you help me out? I forget which, is this Beast Ferry? I forget which road you said it was.
This is it's Glen McConnell in the area of Bees Ferry.
Okay, and this is for inclusion in the Church Creek Flood Storage Project, and we're just taking a portion of that right away.
And Mr. O'Brien, if you don't, or Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind me just clarifying very briefly.
Sure.
Yeah, and Mr. O'Brien's exactly right. It's the right of way that extends from the edge of the Glen McConnell right of way over to the primary Church Creek Canal. So it's not actual road right of way, even though it's SCDOT, so they own it as right of way. It's basically a paper right of way with a drainage canal in it that we're using as part of our storage project for the Church Creek area.
Hey, any storage we can get out there, we need, right? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any-
Who is
any
the,
oppo-
I'm sorry, who is the motion and second on that?
I moved.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
So we're on the same page, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Temporary encroachments, item F, anything unusual, Mr. O'Brien?
So, sir, we have a lot. We have several
See.
fences, irrigation systems, and right angle signs, but all have been inspected and recommended for approval of the encroachments, and we offer them to the committee as information.
Okay,
Can I ask a quick question, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman?
sure. Councilman Shahid.
So I know I had this issue, and Matt and I have talked about this in my neighborhood, that some of these folks erect fencing in a drainage ditch. And we've been, and some of those issues are just because the survey lines are off, or there's older neighborhoods and people sort of lose track of where the ditch actually ends up in the back of their yard. And those people erecting those fences are not temporary. What makes a fence temporary in a drainage easement?
Several years ago, Councilmember Shade, we met with our legal staff, and it was a recommendation of legal staff that a fence, since it can be removed and constructed, it's not a permanent, like a footing of a building or something. And if necessary, I will tell you that we work very closely in conjunction with Benji Smith and Matt's staff. Our inspectors meet in the field anytime we're in a drainage easement, just to make sure. And we do not approve all of them. And some of them we make the people move for those same reasons you say. They're not even aware of what the drainage easement means on their property or not. So we've gotten a lot better at working in conjunction with stormwater to ensure that those disrupt. As a matter of fact, I just got a couple requests from Benji this week for some that have actually been constructed illegally without going through our process. They're going to have to be removed to allow some maintenance to take place.
And I just am presuming then that we're keeping good records of this, and these easements and encroachments are duly recorded so that successor property owners understand these
That's
things
correct.
are
Yes,
quote
sir.
unquote
Yes, sir.
temporary.
We keep a list and do record it, and we make sure that all of them, we send a copy back, and we also, we have our inspector make an actual personal contact with everybody that does this in the field, So when first step, when they get an encroachment request, is for our inspector to meet in the field with the person to see what they're proposing to be laid out, and then using our standards to make sure it doesn't adhere to any problems with the drainage system.
Okay. Thanks for that explanation. I appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir.
And I think we've gotten better with this, obviously, over time. I think that a lot of the properties in West Ashley were at one time not part of the city, they weren't incorporated. And so the transfer of the documentation, which is a critical component of all of this,
Absolutely. Yes,
is
sir.
to make sure that successor property owners and the city is aware of what's going on. So if it becomes an issue, they are aware that it may have to be yanked out.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bryan, for the explanation. Item G is for information on the trash out. But let me ask this. I know the mayor has to, is on a tight schedule. Is there any item on the agenda you want us to advance prior to leaving, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, that would be H3, please.
All right, if we could, let's take a motion to go out
So
of
moved.
order and take H3. Can we get a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Properly moved in second. All in favor of advancing the schedule
Aye.
of H3? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item H3, who's going to address this first?
Mr. Fountain.
Fountain? Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can start with this.
Okay.
Certainly. Let me share my screen briefly. So this is a report out, Mr. Chairman, from basically the work that we accomplished at the Budget Ad Hoc Committee, discussing how we would advance drainage projects and which projects would require new funding in order to change the level, basically of recommendation to how far to take the project currently with council approval, and then which projects we are continuing to advocate for which phase they are currently at. And I'm going to try to clarify that because that's a very confusing set of statements I just made. But the top section of the chart here are basically updated recommendations from the Budget Ad Hoc Committee. So we list the project. For instance, this first example here is the Alberta Long Lake drainage improvement. The committee recommended that we advance that project into preliminary engineering. We recommended $1.5 million in order to accomplish that activity, and that funding would come out of the drainage fund. So basically, I laid out here each of the projects we discussed at the Budget Ad Hoc Committee. And I can run through those if the committee would like, or we can read them on the screen, whatever is more straightforward for everyone. Laid out again which level of design or construction we took each project through. Again, those costs that were discussed at the Budget Ad Hoc Committee for each of those projects, and then what the potential funding sources would be for each of those projects. The table below that here, these are existing projects that the Budget Ad Hoc Committee basically recommitted to the existing direction of those projects. Some of these will require some additional funding depending on costs, as we see some cost increases lately. But these were basically staying at the same general level of progress recommended by the Budget Ad Hoc Committee as what we have currently. I'm happy to discuss any of those in more detail or go through them one by one if that's helpful, if whatever your preference is, Mr. Chairman.
let me open the floor up to questions. Mr. Mayor, you have any initial questions? And then followed by council members. I can't see the council members.
Well, I would just comment, Mr. Chairman, that these, particularly the ones on the top, are projects that we've been, quote, talking about for a long time. And
Right.
to be able to advance them, to real work happening on them is I think in everyone's interest. Of special note with the Central Park
Right.
improvements that we've been talking about for some years, and this would actually advance not just the design and permitting, but to the extent that the funding allowed to construction for the first two areas, and in a similar fashion, the DuPont Wapu drainage improvements, the first four of those recommendations. So this, I'd consider a critical step for us to advance these projects to reality. And when we did the review of the stormwater funding over the projected next 5 or 6 years, I think it was, we had enough funding in place to now say we could advance these projects, and with committee and council's approval, I think this is a terrific step for us to take.
I agree. Any Councilman Shayade, I see your hand.
Well, I just can't let this pass without two of these projects, the Fort Royal area and West Pawnee Place, are projects I've been working with Mr. Fountain on even before he got on board with us. So these are very important projects for these communities. And I noticed, and also the DuPont WAPU is something you and I share, Mr. Chairman. It's going to have an impact, I think, on the work that we are anticipating with Citadel, the Epic Center, the Epic Center. So let's get these suckers approved and move them on. This is the accumulation of a lot of hard work by a lot of people who've been pushing these projects and identifying them. And I'm happy to see where they are at this point.
I couldn't agree more. I see Ms. Amy Wharton, you're on mute. I see your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to add too that once these are approved through council on Tuesday, then when we start working on the capital improvement plan, we will add those to the capital improvement plan.
All right, thank you so much. Councilman Bowden.
Thank you. I just wanted to, so the Lake Daughter Long Branch Creek improvements, I see those up top, and then the Glen McConnell culvert down at the bottom. So I just want to see if the
that's a good
top
question.
where it says the 1.5 million, is that what we talked about? Like Councilmember Shealy's?
I don't think so. Let's get some clarification on Mr. Fountain. The Glen McConnell, I thought that one's already put to bed, Mr. Fountain.
So you're right, Mr. Chairman, the Glen McConnell culvert at the bottom, that is the existing $1.5 million allocation from council that was voted through at council.
Right.
The recommendation from the Budget Ad Hoc Committee was to advance $1.5 million towards the improvements to the actual creek and lake that would be necessary to basically be able to use those pipes, to activate those pipes for preliminary engineering work.
But that's not going to slow down the culverts on the.
Correct. The culvert work has already been approved all the way through council.
All right, good.
The Lake Daughter Long Branch work is basically to be able to eventually use those culverts in the future. That's been recommended by Budget Ad Hoc Committee to start the preliminary engineering.
I remember
project.
But I can see the confusion on that one. Good catch, Councilman.
Well, it's just great to see that we're moving forward with the I guess the second of probably many phases of that project.
Yeah,
all kind of at the same time.
That's true. Are there any council members? Again, I can't see everybody. So if anybody, please speak up, be recognized on this before we carry to a motion. All right, hearing none, let's entertain a motion to carry this forward. Properly moved by Councilman Shayade.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be back after my little meeting with the congressman.
All right, take care. Have a good meeting. All right, now we can go back up to item G1, which was for information, as I understand, proposed changes to trash collection methods. Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You may recall last fall, late last summer, early last fall, we talked about some proposed changes to our ordinance on collection amounts and fees and things like that. And we've been working very hard to come up with what we think is a good plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's got a presentation he'd like to share with the committee to kind of go over the reasoning behind all this. And it's just kind of refresh your memory. And also, Councilmember Bowden is new to the committee, to give him some information. And we'll be glad to present this. And our intent would be to, if the committee agrees, is to take these to council in July, because it does involve some ordinance changes, then have a education period for 2 months, and then start the actual enforcement under the new ordinance in the fall sometime. So Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Mr. Alltop, you up?
Good afternoon, council member. Thanks, Tom. So we've been working on this presentation pretty much for the last 2 weeks. We've had some help from BFRC, Ms. Wharton and Andrew as well, kind of putting this thing together for everybody. As you know, we've had quite a time here recently picking up yard debris and bulk items just due to the significant amount being placed out each week. So we kind of want to get back to revisiting that code and getting that, see if we can't get that moving forward. This first slide I'm going to show you is some collection trends that we've been seeing. For quarter one of last year to quarter two or quarter one of this year, just for the city alone, we collected 994 tons more than we did in 2021 for the first quarter. That's a little over 23% increase. You know, our partners in Capital and Trident have also been seeing an increase in tonnages, with Capital seeing a 46 ton increase, and Trident seeing a 432 ton increase.
What anybody, Mr. Alltop, how do you, we know the cause of that? I mean, it hadn't been a storm or anything. I mean, I don't think.
So there's not really a known cause, other than, you know, there are more people moving to the area, more people coming into the city. You know, like you said, we haven't had a storm for what, 2.5 years. So there hasn't been anything to knock this debris down. So people are pruning more and placing it out to the curb. Whereas, you know, previous storms, we put it all out at once and then collect it.
Right.
That's the only thing that I can come up with.
Yeah.
So altogether, we're up 1,472 tons, which is 2.9 million pounds of trash, just from quarter one, comparing the two, quarter one from 2021 and quarter one from 2022. Here you can see that the trend has been trending upward as far as tonnages. This dates back from January of 2016, and it just continues to rise every year. And then here's some, you can compare the staffing versus the tonnages. As you can see, the blue graph is our tonnages, and you can see that rise. And then the pink is our employee retention, as you can see the decrease. So we're losing employees and trending up on tonnages since 2016. So what do other municipalities and localities do compared to us? So Savannah, Georgia has a 15 bag limit on lawn and leaf bags. Their limbs must not take more than 5 minutes to collect. Tree stumps are not collected, and non-compliance will have fees associated with them. Goose Creek, they only allow a use of a 96-gallon garbage cart and one small limb pile. Charlotte, North Carolina, no more than 32 gallons of yard clippings and no more than a 3x3 pile, or 2 piles that are no more than 3x3x3, and no tree stumps. And then Augusta is the same thing, pretty much 32 gallons of lawn and leaf clippings, no pile larger than 10 feet, with a maximum of 10 cubic yards, and non-compliance will have fees associated with. So requested trash code revisions. We can send this out. This is just some of the changes. I go into more detail here in the next slide. Some of the key changes. Currently, we have unlimited bags that they can put out, unlimited bulk, unlimited brush, and unlimited white goods. So we don't limit anything other than construction debris, which is 1 cubic yard, and that's about 96 gallons or 1 garbage cart full. We would like to change this to 15 yard bags per week, 1 pile that is 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot per week for trash or yard debris, and then 1 for bulk items. So give you a reference, a 4 by 4 by 4 pile is about the size of an average oven, is what they'd be able to put out each week. And then limit of 2 white goods per collection week, which would be a stove and a refrigerator, washer, dryer, etc. So here's some of the pictures we've taken of the problem out there. You can see the lawn and leaf bags just down the street. big piles of brush that we face with every week. Some of the key changes that we'd like to make would be, missed collections that our residents failure to place out the container curbside at the required time, which we can verify with a date stamped photo from the truck that our drivers take. They can request a pickup at a cost of $250 per pickup. And that $250 is basically our costs, right? Our maintenance, our fuel, our employee time, and things like that is how we came up with that number. Each additional 4x4x4 pile that exceeds the weekly limit of 1 can be scheduled for collection with the Environmental Services Division at $250 per pile. Each additional 4x4x4 yard waste pile that exceeds the weekly limit of 1 can be scheduled for collection with Environmental Services for the same cost of $250. There'll be a limit of 2 white goods per collection. Any additional can be scheduled for a cost of $50 per item. Trees that have only been cut down by the homeowner may be removed if scheduled with Environmental Services Division at a cost of $250 per tree. The city of Charleston will not remove any trees that are cut down by contractors. And then multifamily residents that have more than 8 units would be required to get a dumpster unless amended by the city. Proposed weekly collection amount. So a 4x4x4 pile of yard waste is roughly about 2.37 cubic yards. And that goes for the same for bulk. 15 yard and leaf bags is about 0.12 cubic yards, which equates to 4.86 cubic yards per week that we'd pick up, or 1.34 tons. So compared to 2021, this is actually an increase from 0.68 to 0.78. So we're actually increasing it. Not everybody puts that much stuff out, but the big piles are hurting us every week.
Mr. Althoff, I hate to interrupt. Can you go back to the picture that you had, the leaf bags and the debris?
Yes.
Right. So now under the new recommendation, in particular the debris, not so much the bags, but how would a homeowner? How would a homeowner reduce this to what we're being asked? 4x4x4.
So that's a good question. I'm not sure how they're going to reduce it. I mean, less pruning, spread it out over weeks, right? You don't have to put it all out at once. But right now, when we get out to these piles, it's sometimes these piles are taking 15 minutes.
Well, I understand why. No, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I'm just wondering how, once we educate the public, I mean, what is their education going to be? I know it's going to be 4x4x4, but obviously this person, I don't know, I guess you do anyway.
You'd have to spread it out over time.
Help them be in compliance, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, you'd have to spread it out, right? Not do everything at once, or don't put it all out to the curb every week.
Okay, all right. Okay.
We've got some educational pieces later in the presentation what we're going to do.
Well, pardon my interruption.
No, you're fine. So we're also requesting some.
While we're stopped, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure.
So I know how you arrived at the 250, and that makes sense. Just straight up applying the cost to the person who's going to use it. But I assume that what we actually sort of don't want people paying that fee and having to go out there again. I mean, if they do, they do. But it seems like what we're really trying to do here is make people be a bit more thoughtful about what they're asking us to do for them. So was there any thought given to maybe a lower amount that might still have that deterrence?
So yes, we've considered that, and you're right, Councilman. Our goal is not to charge them. Our goal is to educate them and reduce the amount that's being picked up. Because, like you said, we don't want to go back out and collect more stuff than we have to. The object of this is to change the behavior from putting all this excess debris out each week. We have looked at other fees. And this is the one that we arrived on. Now that can be talked about, right, and then adjusted, of course, as this moves further along.
Councilmember Bowden, also to talk directly about garbage, one of the issues we have is I'm sure y'all get calls too. They miss my garbage, they miss my garbage. And as we've kind of incorporated the ASLs into our operation, we now have the ability to take a picture. And it doesn't happen all the time, but there's a lot of times, I mean, I've done it myself, forget to put the can out. So instead of calling and just saying, look, I forgot to put my can out, is there any way you can come pick it back up? We get a call saying you missed us. So now if and we do have a small truck, which I know Councilmember Waring we've helped him a couple times. It's great. We have the ability to go out and do that. And if people if they're just a little bit more honest with us, we'll do everything we can to pick it up, including sending somebody back on the route. But we more and more get calls every day, and common sense that tells you that if we pick up 15 houses on the street, we're not going to usually miss one in the middle of the street if the can's out there. So that's, as Matt said, it's a kind of an education process, and we don't want to charge anybody for anything. We want to provide the services, one of the basic services of government. But we looked at those long and hard, and again, if depending on the council's and committee's wish, if we have to go back and sharpen the pencil on that, we will. But they're really covering our basic cost.
Let me follow up on Councilman Councilman Sheehy, go ahead. You had your hand up. Go ahead.
It made more sense for you to follow up on Councilman Bowden, and I can come in.
Okay, thank you. Let's say I'm that homeowner but let's say I was a homeowner that had all the brush out front there, and I knew the rules have changed. If I knew I was going to put a lot of stuff out and probably have to pay that $250, can I do it in advance? In other words, if I, instead of our people coming through and then coming back doing it, you follow me? If I knew
Yes.
I was going to
Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Matt. We talked about it.
Yes.
Go ahead and tell them what we decided. Yes, sir.
So anything over the allowed amount, which is, the 15 bags and the 2 piles, one for brush and one for bulk. If you're going to have more than that, we've been working with the citizen service desk. So they would call and then they would request the pickup, and they could make the payment then if they knew they were going to have a bunch out. So that way, when we got there, we'd have a list of people that have, paid their fee or whatever, and then we'd be able to pick it up while we're there.
Right. Yeah. It seems like, get back to Councilman Bowden's point, sharpen the pencil, but if we picked it up if we knew and we picked it up the first time through, it seemed like it'd be a little bit cost effective on our part as opposed to coming through and then coming back. Anyway, now Councilman Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand what the problem is. I think I understand what the problem is. I'm just not sure what we're trying to accomplish here. And let me explain what I mean. People have got, for whatever reason, they trim limbs in the back of their house or the front in their yard somewhere. They're getting rid of debris of some sort because they cleaned out the garage or the attic, or they're replacing something. So this is not a sense of somebody going above and beyond what they normally do. It's just, this is what's happening. And more people have moved into the area, and our tonnage has increased over time. So by charging somebody, even if it's $5 for being over these limits, they're not doing this maliciously. This is not something that they're outside of taking care of and saying, I'm over a particular limit. It goes back to what Mr. O'Brien said. This is a service that the city provides to the community. This is part of our basic services. We pick up garbage, we pick up debris. That's what we're supposed to be doing. I'm just somewhat perplexed by the concept that you've got a limit on 3x3 or 4x4. How does that help us? Because you're going to still pick it up. You go charge a fee for it, but you still go pick it up. If the fee is $5 or $250, we still got obligated to pick it up. How does the excess or the surplus fee alleviate the problem? Maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I don't see the connection.
Councilmember Shea, let me try and answer from my standpoint, and I'll ask Matt to jump in when I finish.
Yeah.
As you we all know, it's not everybody that has these situations where we have these piles out there. For everyone that's out there, there's probably 2 or 3 houses where there's 1 or 2 bags and stuff like that. But the main issue that Matt and I discussed is when you come up on large piles like this, is the time. Our routes, as with the construction of new family construction and things go on, our routes get longer, and the ability to finish and provide the service. That's what we're running up against with our delays now is because of staffing issues, not being able to get all our routes in a timely manner and completing. So the main thing is if we can kind of plan to see where it's going to be. And we've done a lot of research in a lot of cities, not just ones Matt showed, but other ones locally that just you have to have some limit. If not, if everybody wanted to put everything out there, we would never complete one route. So it gives us the ability to plan. And if we have to have additional pickups, or if there's going to be several heavy stops, we can at least plan for those. And Matt, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. So again, we're trying to change the behavior, right? We're not trying to charge more. By changing behavior and putting less out, it's going to make it more efficient for us to be able to collect and get to everybody each week. This isn't going to affect a huge number of people, maybe 5 to 10% of the residents will be affected by this, because 90% of them don't put this out. A lot of the issue is too landscapers. They're taking advantage of it because we can't police it, right? They'll go out and do work and throw it on the curb for us to collect, when in reality, they're supposed to be removing that stuff from the curb. But unless we actually catch them doing that, there's no way for us to police that. So this is another way to help make it more efficient. And that, our guys currently are working 6 days a week trying to get this stuff up.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I just sort of follow back up on.
Sure, go ahead, Councilman.
And certainly I'm going to do what I can to support our staff, because I know what the problem is, and I know how stretched our staff is and our crews are on doing this. And I hear what Mr. O'Brien and Matt are talking about with how this slows things down. And maybe it's just a small percentage as they've told us, but and if these are the landscapers who are contracted to clean out someone's yard or to do the landscaping work, it certainly is their responsibility to haul that stuff off. That's what they get paid to do. They should be held accountable to hauling that stuff off, not the homeowner or the occupant of that residence. I'm still just maybe I'm just having a mental block on this, guys, that I just not wrapping my head around it. Besides the landscaping folks, if I've got debris or trash that's going to have to be removed, it's not like I'm trying to overload. I mean, it may be an added burden to the city, and exactly what Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Alta were talking about. It slows the collection process down, because instead of picking up 5 bags, you're picking up 15. I understand that, but it's not. They're going to bring it out either and store it in the backyard, but it's going to make it to the curb either the first week or the second week of the month.
Isn't it? And you pay for your entertainment. Interesting, isn't it, Steve? The meeting directors, we've seen the lineup of this one.
I'm not sure where that was coming from, but
That was me.
Oh. I mean, I'm not trying to be an obstructionist with this. I just want to make sure I'm getting, before I vote on something, I fully understand how this is going to improve it, because I don't think that the trash or the debris is not going to come to that curb sooner or later.
I follow your point. Mr. Bryan, do you follow it, Mr. Altup?
So I understand, I understand that the brush will eventually get to the curb, right? But if we can spread that out over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to help us get the routes done, right? Because sometimes we don't get all the routes done. So if we can prolong it from 1 week to 3 weeks, it's going to allow us to make sure the routes are getting done, that we're making it to every every resident's house and getting their weekly collection, and you guys won't have to hear about us being missed
Right.
pickups and things. And
Yeah,
it just,
it's the way that people are putting it out there that's slowing up the routes.
yes.
And
And just
they don't know that. They don't know that.
just for a brief, so that 1,475 tons, that equates to about 500 truckloads. So if you do the maintenance, you're right, we're reducing the amount of life on those trucks for the extra miles. The fuel costs right now are out of control. So you're looking at saving money on fuel. It's just, it adds up.
Well, let me say this, Mr. Altop and Mr. O'Brien. I mean, I understand the tonnage. I do agree we got more people. And obviously we need more staff. So if I'm the taxpayer, let me wear another hat for a second. I'm one of the new people that moved here. I'm contributing to the extra tonnage, but then I'm saying, well, I'm paying my taxes just like the people who've been here 30 years, paying their taxes. How come we not, with more people coming in, paying more taxes, why is it that we don't have the revenue to hire our people to increase our staff?
Well, Mr. Wayne, one thing I'll say that we find out, and Matt can confirm this also, people that move into this area are shocked at the service we provide for nothing. I mean, the garbage and trash service. I mean, when they find out they don't have to pay to have stuff picked up, bulk items and
Right.
additional things, they're shocked. I mean, they can't believe this. We hear that all the time. It's to your point though, you know, staffing issues. Amy and her staff and our HR staff work very hard. I can proudly say that this week, thanks to that combination working with Matt and I, we were able to rehire 2 drivers that left the city. They're now coming back because we were able to get an increase for trash drivers, which is a tremendous thing to us. But I spent last week, I was in Greenville for the State American Public Works Association meeting and had sessions, education sessions all day. But the best time I spent was almost 2 hours with the solid waste managers for the city of Columbia, city of Greenville, and the city in Richland County, and all of us discussing the same problems and the staffing issues and just the difficulty in getting CDL drivers, not only in the government industry, but nationwide. If you ride down 26 today, you'll see 2 or 3 billboards for trucking companies advertising for CDL drivers. And we're working very hard, Matt and Ben DeLucci, our fleet manager, to work along with Rick Markowitz and safety to do what we can to hire and train more CDL drivers to allow this. And we're trying to make it easier on our staff and employees because, we've gone to the ASLs. I mean, in theory, you can now collect garbage and never get out of your truck. I mean, you sit in your truck all day and arm puts, and we're going, as we presented to you guys recently, knuckle booms, where we're going to go to now, instead of scowls and the claws. And one thing that we've even incorporated with the knuckle booms, our current operation equipment, the driver has to get out of the truck, go back. Mr. Wayne, you've seen it.
Yeah,
Now, we're going where we're going to incorporate where they never even have to leave the cab. They'll get in a seat behind and with windows and cameras, be able to collect without getting that. And that's going to cut down on workers' comp. So it's a constant educational and improvement flow we're doing. And I think this in our trying to think of what we can do to make sure that we serve all our citizens with that basic service. And right now we're doing the best we can. And we've had to augment some of our services to do that. But it frustrates me to have to tell people, I'm sorry we didn't get to you, but we're just trying to think of ways that we can possibly provide that service. And where there are, again, like Matt says, I don't know that the percentage of people this is going to affect is going to be that very high. And I mean, there's ways we could even go back to the drawing board. We go around when we can say, once or twice a year, you get a pass for like a certain large amount. You can call and schedule. So that's an option we could think about.
And anything over that once or twice, then you got to pay. I got you.
Like that, because we're not trying to make money. We're just trying to cover.
I know. Yeah, we know.
But I think maybe that's an option we want to think about is we say, okay, you get 1 or 2 times a year where you can schedule a pickup, even up to a certain amount. Not nothing where you could line the street like we saw with 20 or 30 bags, but something we could come up with some thoughts on that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Altop, I promise you, I'm not going to interrupt you anymore.
But-
Oh, wait a minute, I do have Councilman Shahid.
Yeah, and I would just pick up on something that Mr. O'Brien said, Mr. Chairman, and
Yeah.
for our consideration. You know, part of our city's responsibility is this type of basic service. So when someone rolls out that green can, they expect that green can garbage to be picked up. But the other part of this, and guys, this is maybe a philosophical discussion we need to expand on. When they're taking out debris, yard debris or refrigerators, whatever, does that exceed the expectations of a property owner on pickup? And is that a point where we pivot to charging a fee as an extra service to do that? Not that we're trying to be a for-profit organization, but it is a burden when we go pick up the yard debris and these refrigerators and things of that nature. Is that something worthwhile to discuss, to redefine what we're providing as basic service? I mean, I hear what y'all are saying, and I'm going to be as supportive as I can with the work that y'all have got to do and the burden that this imposes on y'all, because y'all do such a terrific job and y'all do respond to our citizen complaints about all this stuff. And we got to fix it. We've got to address it and we got to fix it somehow. But this is a good discussion to have about where we are with all of this. So
Yeah.
I just throwing that out there for something for consideration, Mr. Chairman, as to, is this something we need to be thinking about ourselves as a city on what we now consider basic services? And then do we redefine this as something as additional services that's not part of our basic responsibility? I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't, but Mr. O'Brien kind of triggered that with his comments. That's where this may end up.
Yeah, one of the reasons I brought the discussion up about taxes and all that briefly, and this is for a larger discussion. I want to know on the other side of COVID, if the city actually has a structural funding problem, because the world has changed. In particular, paying CDL drivers, paying people in these positions. Frankly, I think they're underpaid for years, for decades. But on the other side of COVID, the world is changing. These people have other options to go to, and our grading schedule and the way we receive revenues from the city, I would think we need to relook. We need to look at our funding formula for this city all over again. You got property taxes for that, basically police and fire. Just those two things absorb all the property taxes, and the rest of the revenue comes from something else. Parking, accommodation sales tax, fees, of course, for certain things. And when we add all that up, is it enough to run this city? And right now, to me, it ain't enough. But anyway, that's a bigger discussion for another day. Mr. Alter.
Chair, before Matt starts back, I would like to say that I think some of the items that you and Councilman Shade have mentioned, and if we want to somehow have, I don't know whether it's be a workshop for public, for public works and utilities for these items or something, anything y'all would like to do, we'll be glad to set up and facilitate and just have these discussions. So just let us know what your desires are, and we'll be glad to work with y'all on that.
Well, thank you for that. And I tell you what, because in a workshop like that, I think in particular, some of the key points you shared or you learned with, the people from Richland, City of Columbia, Richland, and at the workshop you attended, I think would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
Because everybody's searching for answers.
Absolutely. And we'll turn it back over to Matt.
I see Mr. Councilman Bowden's hand again. Councilman Bowden?
We're going to give these guys a whiplash.
Okay.
So I just, while we're sort of on the wish list, two things that were said that I would really like to see going forward would be something like, kind of a grace where if you tell us beforehand, either you pay a lower fee or we do it for free once or twice a year. I think that would be a great thing. And then really sort of some critical thought about exactly what amount we could charge as a fee that sort of strikes a balance between achieving that deterrent and not making us look like we are trying to profit from this. it's interesting timing because I just sent out an email to folks today about some of the stuff we've been talking about recently as far as, park funding and some other thing, paying firefighters more and that sort of stuff. I got a bunch of emails back, not totally surprisingly, saying, look, we're going into a recession in this time of inflation. We're already getting hit on our personal budgets here and here. If the city starts charging more, that's just gonna inflict more pain essentially. And I'm not, at all unsympathetic to that idea. So I just, $250 is a pretty shocking number. And like I said, I see why y'all are doing it, and I think it makes perfectly good sense. I think we just need to try to make sure we're seeing it from, an individual's perspective as well.
Good points. Now back to Mr. Altar.
Okay, thanks. So I'll get going again. So just one thing that you guys brought up, right, was your basic service, right? So on garbage, we have a limit of 3 garbage cans, right? Everything must be in the garbage can to be collected. But on trash, there is nothing, right? They can put out whatever. So I guess that's what our objective is, trying to set that limit, right? As we do on garbage. So what does that limit look like, right? So these are the numbers that we came up for, and now if we need to adjust those with the fees or whatever, I mean, we are able to do that. But so basically, it's setting the level of here's what we're going to, here's what you can do, and then we can go from there, type of thing. Kind of like the way garbage works. I don't know if that makes sense.
A little bit.
So commercial, as you know, we've had some issues down there in our CBD as well, right? With commercial collection. So we have just a few changes we'd like to make on commercial. Those key changes would be that the businesses can only use the City of Charleston issued garbage carts. Right now, they're using round carts that don't have the lifting bar. So our crews have to pick those garbage cans up and dump them manually, which is definitely increasing the chance of our employees getting hurt. And some of them things are really heavy with the glass bottles and different things in them. So that's one of the changes we'd like to make. But we'd also like to start collection at 2:30 a.m. And have them have the garbage cans out by 10 p.m. No earlier than 10 p.m. So this will ensure a couple things. This will allow us to get all the businesses picked up before the street sweeper comes through, so that if the garbage truck does make a mess or spill something, the sweeper can clean it up. And this will allow us to get the containers off of the street earlier in the day, so that when our tourists start really coming out, the garbage cans will already be gone.
Mr. Altar, what time are they required to have them out now?
So they can have them out the day before. I think it's like, I want to say 11 o'clock is what it is now, but they can leave it out till 11 a.m. Right. So 11 a.m. on a weekend is right prime tourist area. Everybody's out going to breakfast, starting shopping and things. So they're out there, they're in the way, they're on the sidewalk. So our goal is to get them off of the curb earlier in the morning, so that way the sidewalks aren't blocked.
Well, let me ask you a question. So this is like in the King Street entertainment, I'm gonna call it entertainment. So I'm a proprietor. I got my cans out there by 10 o'clock. Somebody leaves Councilman Shaheed's bar and had too many to drink, and he decides to kick the can over and trash the street. I mean, how do we?
It's going to be a high class bar, by the way, Councilman.
I'm just so that's not been a problem in the past. I'm asking. I don't know.
So no, it hasn't. So so our main issue is that the sweeper comes through before the garbage truck finishes, because right now we do 2 runs. They come in, they do the first run, and then they take a break, and then they start their second run at 9. Our goal is to eliminate a second run and do everything at the first.
That makes sense.
And then have the sweeper come through and clean up, because some of that beer and waste will spill out on the road and it smells. So we'd we'd like
Yeah.
to make sure that that gets cleaned up before all the tourists and everything get down there.
Got you. Okay.
And then it's the same as a $250 fee if you don't have your garbage cart out and you want us to come back and pick it up. Those are the key changes there.
Hey, can I ask a quick question about the before
Yeah.
10 p.m.?
Yes,
So,
sir.
With Matt, what businesses are you looking at before 10 p.m.? Because if a business shuts down at 5 or 6 o'clock, does that leave them out in the cold?
So, yes, and we have had a meeting with some of the people on the CBD. I think her name was Helen Hill, and she's Councilman Seeking's also brought this up as well, so he'd be able to speak towards this as well. And they don't think it's going to be a problem. Because right now, if the bars close, right, and they don't have nobody come in until, a lot of them places don't open until 11 o'clock or noon. So it's just kind of where are we shifting it, right?
But if I'm a retail establishment, I'm going to be closed well before 10 o'clock in most cases.
Yep. So
So-
we can adjust those. Those were just, again, as we wanted to bring it here for discussion
Okay.
to see if we needed to move those times and stuff. So.
I see what you're doing, and I like the concept of what you are proposing, but I would be some concern for some of these places that close well before 10 o'clock. I think we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, there would definitely be an educational piece, and we wouldn't do anything without having the meetings down there and everything with them.
I'd like to get their feedback on this.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
And then here's some of the educational stuff that we're planning on doing, some mailers for both residential, commercial, bulk trash. We're planning on putting little QR stickers on the garbage carts that when they scan them, that take them to the new website with the changes already on it. Newspaper ads, social media posts, press release. We've been working with BNS to contact all the HOAs. There's a landlords list that we would get and send out mailings like that as well.
I tell you what, recently the county, changed the days pick up recycling. I thought they did a real good job getting the word out.
Yep. Yeah, we can reach out to them and see what worked for them, and we can kind of mirror some of that as well.
Okay.
These are just some of the examples of some of it. So the first, front and back, and then the QR code over there on the right-hand side. And then this
you
is,
go back to the 4x4x4. When you explained it to us, just maybe adjust some of the verbiages. You said that's about the size of an oven.
yes,
You make you got parentheses equivalent to 1 unit of bulk waste. You might do better putting that about the size of an oven.
okay.
As opposed to,
Yep, we can make that change too. We can put that in there. This is equivalent to an oven or whatever.
correct. I think something would be a little more practical for
Okay.
average person out there.
Okay, you can do that. And then these are the notice to the property managers if they have to get dumpsters and things. And then the last one there is just, how we would like you to place the items out for collection. 3 feet in between objects so our crews can get in there and get the stuff safely and things. And then questions.
We kind of hit you up on the way through this. But anyway, any final questions on behalf of commission members?
I just like the idea of the workshop, Mr. Chairman, and part of that component with the education, the tie-in and what we're doing here and why.
I agree.
Mr. Waring, what I'll do is I'll contact you, and Matt and I'll talk and kind of get your schedule and how you do. And
Okay.
I think it may be helpful. We opened it up to all council members. So
I agree.
And
I
just
agree.
have it that, and just then we'll get and see what we can schedule. So I'll give you a call first of the week. We can talk about some thoughts. I know summer's kind of difficult, but see if we get as many people as we can together.
Maybe it is the summer that we do it because we only meet fortunately once a
Yes,
month.
sir.
Maybe it's the time we should do it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Altop. That was really, really good stuff. And I appreciate your patience with our interruptions along the way.
Thank you all for y'all's listening.
Sure. Item H1, Forest Acres drainage project. Big number here, almost 11 million. Mr. Fountain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item H1, Forest Acres, this is recommendation of approval of construction contract for Forest Acres Drainage Project, both Phase 2A and 2B as a single contract, a Phase 2 contract with Gulfstream Construction in the amount of $10,967,819.66. This project funding would be through the 2012 Stormwater Bond, the local option permit funds, and the drainage fund. This is the first project that we've seen basically where we did have some of these recent cost increases come in our construction bid. So it is a higher amount than we had originally anticipated, but Ms. Wharton has done her usual magic of finding us cash flow that'll work for the project and made the department recommend moving forward with the construction contract.
Thank you, Ms. Wharton and Mr. Fountain. Yeah, any questions on this one from committee members? This is a long time coming. Let me tell you, when my first meeting on council was January of 2012, and I voted for the 2012 bond. I think it was in February of 2012, and part of that funding was to do this. So
it's only 10 years.
It's only been 10 years. You know, it was the community had worked on it so hard until I asked my father to come back and some community members, because I got to vote on it. But the truthful part about it, people had done years and years of work to bring it to fore. So I guess as a council person, I was getting credit for voting for work other people had done. So, Mr. Feller, I can't tell how happy I am to see this, because in some people's cases, water are threatening going into their home. So it's one thing to be coming up into the yard, but when people have to get sandbags and stuff for certain rain bomb events, this is going to be a big fix for many over there. Mr. Fountain, and we can talk about this outside the meeting. Once we vote for this, there was a hope or a desire on a community center that part of this is coming through. Maybe they could be used potentially as a laydown area when this work is going. We can maybe circle back on that afterwards. But
absolutely.
Any questions on this project?
Do we need a motion?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Properly moved by Councilman Shaik. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Fountain and Ms. Wharton, because I think this thing started out at about $7, not quite $8 million project. You see the inflation. I still think though AT&T should have paid some of this because they delayed this project for I don't know how many years before you even came, Mr. Fountain. Actually, Mayor Riley was mayor when we had the first meeting with AT&T to move that trunk line, and it took them how many years to? I think they eventually didn't move it. And this should be a lesson in the future though, when another utility causes a delay when we have the money and ready to go. I think just like the highway department, Councilman Shaid said, okay, if you want to do improvement in the right of way, you can do it, but you're going to pick up the maintenance from then on. I actually think the other utilities should contribute to the rise in costs due to their delay. So maybe that's another question for legal, but that's not right to go from 7 million to 11 million. And it wasn't all our fault for a long time. But all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Well, I think we already did this, but I think for the younger people on council, when something like this happens in your district, Councilman Councilman Appel, and another utility delays a drainage project out in Church Creek or something like that, I think we sat by and stayed too quiet about it. And it was a $10 million project according to AT&T to move that line. And they held on to that money for years until they eventually made the expense, but it drove up our costs. So that coordination in the future, mean, the inflationary costs of public works is just too high to let other people drive up our costs like that. Anyway, I'm off that perch. Item H2, Spring Fishburne Phase 4, Amendment number 23, Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is for Phase 4. It's the construction engineering inspection part of the Phase 4 contract. It's recommendation to approve a fee amendment to that contract with Davis and Floyd for $1,281,084. This will extend the duration of our construction engineering inspection work to match the expected final completion date of our project. It's about 90 days of extension on what is originally a 1,255-day construction contract, just for perspective. Those delays are due primarily to weather, but there were some minor delays for some of the COVID and logistics issues we've been having more lately. This cost is being offset to some extent by, there was a what's called a no excuse completion bonus in the contract. If the contractor is able to finish early, basically, that amount is worth up to $600,000 for the contractor. Obviously, at this point, because it's no excuse, weather days, other impacts prevent you from receiving that bonus. So there won't be that expenditure of the $600,000 early completion bonus. We also have about $300,000 left on the Phase 3 CEI contract that will be closing out, and that will be cost savings back into the project. And then there are additional funds in this work also to set up an operations and maintenance system for the pump station, or the mechanical and control systems that we're installing. And then also support on procurement for basically bringing the pump station online, and the city having a maintenance contractor to help with basically keeping these stations up moving forward. So we're not having such expensive upfit and retrofit projects on this station like we do on some of the other stations.
Mr. Fountain, I want to thank you and your team and Ms. Ward and her team to keep up with these cost savings. There's no way we could keep up with that. The length of these contracts, and to even know that we were due a cost savings. Keeping up with the details like that. Thank you so much. Entertain a motion to carry this forward.
So move.
Properly moved. And we have a second.
Second.
Probably moving second. Any more discussion? When would that pump house be finished, you think, Mr. Fountain?
So there's two phases here, Mr. Chairman. Phase 4, which is the wet well and the outfall, that we'll have the potential tour for actually next Friday, if anyone's available. I think we did send out the invite for that. That phase will be completed substantially by October, which means where it's basically a functional system. There will be some final completion items that will extend for another month or two past that, but substantial completion, which is the contractual term we use for when it's functional, this October. The pump station construction will then start in 2023 and will be complete by the end of 2024.
And so when will the actual pumps get, I guess, be ordered?
So the pumps we've ordered, right? We did order at council. That was the contract.
Right,
yeah, those will be delivered likely in 2024 and installed on the back half of the pump station construction. And then basically those will be turned on by the end of mid to the end of 2024. But we will have gravity flow where the pump station or the existing box culverts will still provide basically the improvement of much larger pipes flowing by gravity when we hit substantial completion on this project at the end of this year, October of this year, ideally. So there will be improvements to flooding starting in October, and then more significant improvements, especially during extreme tides or extreme events, by the end of 2024.
That's great. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Fountain. We already did H3. So this ordinance, miscellaneous business, 91 Huger Street. Who's going to, one of the lawyers going to approach this one for us?
I believe that is me, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
So
Tracy, okay.
thank you, sir.
You got the floor.
Got a couple of slides. And I should point out, I have a number of folks here on the call as well to fill in any gaps I miss or clear up anything that I might get wrong. So what we have before you is a proposal for the committee's consideration to create a non-standard service fund district for the James L. Lewis development. There we go. Just to provide you a little bit of background, Grace Homes development, when that one was developed, the overhead lines were moved from one side of the street to the other, which actually delayed undergrounding for this area. So at this time, the city actually put aside $500,000 from the TIF to actually go towards undergrounding in this area. So a little bit just about the James Lewis development. You all are probably aware of this, but just to share, just in case. It is an affordable housing development. It's located at 91 Hanover Street. There are 64 units that are at 60% AMI as part of this project. And as you've heard on other presentations today, and you all are extremely aware of, costs are just increasing, and this impacts everything. Undergrounding is not immune from that. And so this has significantly increased the cost of undergrounding. So you can see the total cost there in orange. I'll show you some diagrams here in just a moment, but the developer is covering approximately $433,000. The city already has that $500,000 dedicated from the TIF. And so there's an outstanding balance of $239,000 to kind of make this project whole, if you will. Just really quickly, where is this project located? They're just south of Lee Street, between Hanover and Nassau, just south of Martin Park, and very close to the Archer School site, where we actually have another non-standard service fund district that you all approved back in December. So this is a brief, or kind of a diagram of what's involved for undergrounding this project. Kind of those areas in green are what will be covered essentially by, and yellow, I think, are what are being covered by the developer. And so what's in orange is kind of making those connections that we would use the non-standard service fund for, as well as the $500,000 that's already been allocated to help for undergrounding for this area. So kind of how do we bridge that gap? Again, that gap today is approximately $239,000. And so for your consideration, create a non-standard service fund district for the development. And then if you all approve that district, we would come back to you in July, come back to Public Works and then to Ways and Means to get the construction approval. Again, that should be approximately $239,000. What the non-standard service fund does, it means that the city and Dominion will split that cost 50-50. Kind of unique scenario for this particular situation is that the design and engineering has already been completed, which typically gets covered under the non-standard service fund, but that's already been done in this instance. So we anticipate the cost to be very close to that $239,000. And I should point out, Joe Apple is actually available on this call from Dominion, as well as Jay, who is part of the development team, as well as Gianna, and of course, Amy and Julia are here as well to try to help answer any questions that you all might have.
Well, let me start out first, ask a question. Once this development is completed, will this non-standard service fund go away? Or what would be the function then in the aftermath?
I believe, I think that once the projects are completed, then they kind of fall off. That's right. Once they're completed and paid for, just like the districts on, like Orange Street is a non-standard service fund district that was created under the previous ordinance. But I don't believe we still have the history of it because it was all done via ordinance, but I don't believe that's a remaining district any longer. And I believe that these would be similar. Hopefully, maybe Julia can answer that more appropriately.
I love it when Tracy throws me under the bus. Thanks, madam.
She
No,
just has
actually,
He just has such confidence in your ability, Julia, to jump right in. I mean, that's.
no, I appreciate
It's the ultimate compliment is what it is.
That's right. And you have your CDL driver's license. That's why.
How did you know? Actually, no, Tracy described that beautifully. I think the fund is for the development and installation of the project. And then once it's done, it's done. It's off the list.
Okay, good. Sounds good to me.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Properly moved in. Second. Hard to get these seconds. All in favor, any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. That's it. Listen, I hope everybody has a great Juneteenth and long weekend, and looking forward to seeing all of y'all on Tuesday. I really am looking forward to seeing absolutely none of y'all on Monday. We normally would have had this meeting on Monday, and I appreciate your indulgence doing it today so we can.
And happy Father's Day, particularly to our new
That's right.
dads on here.
That's
Councilmember
right.
Brown.
That's right.
Thank you.
Mr. Waring, Ms. Waring,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank the committee for taking the time on Friday. We had a lot of important stuff, Matt and I, and being the summer, it's been tough to have to wait a while. So we appreciate your indulgence too, to get through so we could have this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. It's all a team, man. We got to work together.
Hey, we appreciate you guys. Y'all don't know how much we really do appreciate you guys, our full staff, everybody in the stormwater department. God bless all of y'all.
So we just got to find a way to fund it all. And there's a way out there. We just got to find it. All right, Mr. Fountain, I'm going to have to call you outside the meeting on 2 small issues. But anyway, listen, again, y'all stay safe and healthy over the weekend.